The Russian military-industrial complex is a feeding trough for Putin's officials. For example, Putin's inner circle is responsible for the missile component in Russia. Interestingly, among them is a makeup artist, the daughter of one of the officials. This is stated in the material of Channel 24, Terror Industry. How many Kh-101 missiles does Russia plan to produce in 2025? Investigation. The Tactical Missiles Corporation, or KTRV, is one of the largest players in the Russian defense industry. Putin's friends and their children are involved in its operation. Legally, KTRO is 100% owned by the Federal Agency for State Property Management and is one of the main suppliers of weapons and components for Russian aviation. Almost all enterprises included in the holding are engaged in the manufacture of components for the production of a huge number of weapons. Cruise missiles 3M14 caliber, Kh-101, Kh-38, Kh-59 and Kh-69 and other products. The chairman of the board of directors of the corporation is Boris Gryzlov. He was the representative of Russia in the Trilateral Contact Group for the peaceful settlement of the situation in the east of Ukraine, is the chairman of the Supreme Council of United Russia and the current ambassador of Russia to Belarus. KTRV CEO Boris Obnosov is a former employee of the Russian Permanent Mission to the UN and a confidant of Putin. His daughter, makeup artist Olga Zorikova, has a 40% stake in one of her father's companies. Last year, Mikhail Kolesnikov, director of TRV Engineering, was arrested on suspicion of embezzling 40 million rubles. But the criminal case does not prevent him from continuing to actively work to secure Russian defense contracts. The very fact of the businessman's detention indicates that the Kremlin was dissatisfied with the results of the missile attacks on Ukraine. However, since the purchasing company is a pocket feeding trough for Putin's entourage, the activist will not be punished. However, involvement in the manufacture of deadly missiles with which Russia strikes Ukraine makes Kolesnikov, Zorikova, as well as all other employees of TRV-Engineering, not only legitimate targets for our defense forces, but also accomplices in international crimes, the article says. Despite concerns, Ukrainians consider an attack on the May 9th parade in the Russian capital of Moscow unlikely. This is reported by the Washington Post, citing a source in the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. It is noted that speculation is growing in Russia that Ukraine could use this opportunity to embarrass the Kremlin in front of its allies. However, a senior Ukrainian defense official told the publication that the attempt was unlikely due to the low chances of success. As you can see, all of Russia's air defense systems have been redeployed to protect Moscow. Even if there is an attempt, it will not be successful. Perhaps Ukraine will strike other regions, but not Moscow, he said. Another defense official added that an attack on the Red Square event, which officials from China, India and even Europe are planning to attend, could provoke a Russian response and anger Washington. He called speculation that Ukraine was planning an attack overblown. Recently, Ukrainian attacks on Moscow over the past 2 days have led to the closure of airports in Moscow and other regions. 4 Moscow airports, Domodedovka, Sheremetyevo, Vnukovo and Zhukovsky, temporarily suspended operations on Tuesday due to overnight drone attacks. Ukraine began regularly striking Russia with drones in the spring of 2023, with 2 drones said to have reached the Kremlin but were shot down. Since then, Kiev has mainly targeted Russian oil storage facilities and military installations outside Moscow. Sometimes targets in the capital have been used, but to little effect. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said 19 drones were shot down as they approached Moscow in the early morning. He said they caused no casualties or serious damage. The wreckage of the drone shot down by Moscow's air defense fell on a residential building near the Kashirskaya metro station, about 11 kilometers from the Kremlin. The Kremlin launched a full-scale attack on Ukraine in February 2022, hoping to take the country in days, but has since become embroiled in a huge conflict that has killed tens of thousands. Putin has ordered a 3-day truce in Ukraine to coincide with the event, which Kiev has denounced as a ceasefire just for the parade. Ukraine, which has hit Russia and Moscow with drones during the conflict, has said it cannot take responsibility for what happens in Russia and has said some countries approached it to request safety for their leaders attending the parade. An important component of the rocket control unit are altimeters. There are quite a few companies involved in their production, and the failure of even one of them could be critical for Russia for the production of not only the Kh-101 but also other cruise missiles in general, as discussed in the 24-channel article. There are quite a few companies that are involved in the production of altimeters for Russian cruise missiles. The general scheme of the production cycle of altimeters for cruise missiles of various types look like this. UPKB Dettol sends requests to the purchaser, TRV, for the quantity of necessary goods, after which the royal firm buys the necessary goods from various suppliers and sends them to the customer. Altimeters are a rare commodity that is an important component of the missile control unit. Thanks to this piloting device, a cruise missile can navigate in space, bypass terrain, and understand when it needs to rise up or descend down to bypass obstacles or air defense systems. Without such a technologically complex component, all cruise missiles simply could not be used for firing. There are many complex moments in this process that could lead to a complete disruption of the supply of components to factories and, as a result, leave the aggressor country, Russia, without critical important missiles. For example, it could be the arrival of Ukrainian drones or missiles which literally cut off JSC NPO Strela from all supply chains for at least a whole month, or the emergence of problems with settlements between TRV Engineering and Kazakhstani suppliers of tantalum products from which capacitors are made, due to which the Russians had to urgently look for components of Chinese manufacture. It is clear that neither the arrivals nor the refusal of suppliers are capable of 100% disrupting the altimeter production processes. At the same time, each complication of the scheme, the search for intermediaries or enterprises that are ready to take direct or indirect part in the assembly of missiles, greatly complicates the path to the Russians' goal, the murder of Ukrainians. At the same time, it is the electronic component in this type of ammunition that is the most sensitive point for the Russians, since it is simply impossible to replace certain microcircuits, capacitors, or matrices, and replacing suppliers can sometimes take months. Moreover, the overall situation with altimeter components in Russia is difficult. In general, it is so bad that they often have to make ammunition from parts that have not passed the suitability test, because state defense orders cannot be disrupted because Putin needs shelling here and now. Manufacturers prefer to fulfill the terms of contracts on time, at all costs, and whether the missile will look normally or fall on the heads of someone in Belgorod, these are already nuances. The article says,